The IPFW men's volleyball concluded the halfway point in the MIVA conference schedule this past week with 2 home matches on Arnie Ball Court. Friday night, the Mastodons were unable to make a comeback effort against Quincy University, falling in 5 sets, while Saturday night, the Mastodons were swept by Lindenwood University. I'll be joined this week by head men's volleyball coach Ryan Perrotte to discuss the season up until this point. During the Spotlight segment, I'll be joined by freshman middle blocker Cairo Fitzgerald to discuss how he's taken more of an integral role on the team the past few weeks. Stay tuned for more on VolleyDons Weekly. Welcome back to VolleyDons Weekly. I'm your host, Jordan Armstrong. Quick shout out to our sponsors this week, Alco, Active Ankle, ASICS, Glenbrook Dodge, and Hyatt Place. As I mentioned during the opening, your IPFW men's volleyball team is halfway through their MIVA conference schedule. With that, I welcome in head coach Ryan Perrotte to join us this week, as usual. Rock, halfway through the MIVA conference schedule, not necessarily, or not even necessarily, not at all the type of performance that we would have liked to see from the team at this point, halfway through the season, being winless in conference play.
Is that a question, statement, fact? Am I supposed to comment on that?
Is it a question? Is it a statement? Is it a fact? You tell us.
I ask you because I don't have the answers. It's obviously very disappointing to be 0-7. Part of that obviously is our youth and inexperience. The other part of that is 3 starters are injured. The other part of that is that we haven't yet bought in with some team chemistry. So it's a combination of a bunch of things, and I was smart enough to know that this would be a really rocky and roller coaster type of a season. But halfway through, it's been very tough to swallow being 0-7 in conference play.
So looking at the conference play as a whole, getting back to Friday night's match against Quincy University, the Mastodons went down 2-0 against Quincy, but then sort of rallied a little bit more into the 3rd and 4th set, winning those a little bit decisively in terms of volleyball, winning both sets by 5 points, and then getting down to the 5th set, a slow start similar to what happened at McKendree, starting out slow and then really weren't not able to finish the comeback completely. What do you think was not only impactful in the ending of that match, but also a positive to take away from how the team was able to come back being down 2 sets?
Well, I'll start with the first part of that. Twofold in regards to the first question, the difficulty of winning the 5th set. Number one has to do with the fact that when you put yourself behind 3-1 or 4-1, as we did in the 5th set, it's very difficult to play from behind. And we do that consistently.
Especially since the 5th set is shortened and only played until 15 points.
Exactly. So when you spot a team 4 points, it's very difficult to come back because you got to play defense and make things happen. Number 2 is the fact that we continue to make unforced errors at such a high degree that we're not earning points when we serve the ball. And we're giving away 6 cheap points. And when you put those 2 together, as you just mentioned in the 5th set, it's very difficult to win. Had we won, which we had opportunities in the 1st set against Quincy on Friday night, had we pulled that off, we win the match in 4, if not 3. But to Quincy's credit, and they're a senior-laden group of individuals who've beaten Grand Canyon, they've beaten a couple other teams, so they're very battle-tested. They were able to get through a very sluggish opening set, I thought. And by winning that, propelled them into momentum, which even though in sets 3 and 4 we did win, wasn't clean volleyball, except for probably the 3rd set. But the error part and playing from behind really takes its toll. And especially in crucial times making errors, it's very difficult. We didn't block extremely well, even though our numbers do say that we did. I thought we probably could have had maybe more. But our serving got softer as the night went, aside from maybe a couple exceptions with Andy Sellen in particular from the service line, and even Cairo Fitzgerald did a nice job from the service line. It just adds too much pressure on our side of the net to perform.
So a lot of what you just mentioned definitely then translates again to Saturday's night against Lindenwood, losing a close first set that we definitely had our opportunities for, kind of continuing into the second set, and then third set kind of not being able to come back from being down early on. What is it about the amount of errors that we've been seeing from our team late into sets, around the 20-point mark, when either we're a little bit ahead or we're a little bit behind or we're tied, that is causing for not only obviously the errors lead to losing the match, but causing for more than just a result-oriented annoyance or aggravation, not only from a coaching staff standpoint, but especially for the athletes that get to that point and haven't necessarily been able to put a set away, let alone put other teams away?
Well, the frustrating part for me is the fact that we've talked about it so much, and we actually practice it, believe it or not. The other part has to do, for example, Friday night against Quincy, we had a couple swings, I believe, for the opening set where we couldn't put the ball away. Saturday night, we were up, I think it was 19-17 or 2017 or 2018. They call a timeout. Andy Sullen serves the ball after a timeout into the net. Then the very next play, there's a bad set to Andy on the backside, and he doesn't better the ball and hits the antenna. Then the next play, we hit the ball out of bounds on the left side with Tony Price. 3 errors in a row, and that's a big point swing. Late in a set, it kills all your momentum, and then we can't correct ourselves, and part of it is youth, part of it is inexperience, part of it is lack of leadership, part of it is the will to win, part of it is the hate to lose factor. I mean, all these languages thing that we all hear in the sports world, they all come to fruition, and it's frustrating as a staff, as you're a part of this as well, because we've addressed it, we've talked about it time and time again, but yet nothing has transpired to get us over that hump that we need.
So in your opinion, is that something that as a staff should be continued to talk about, or is it something that a result just has to happen? We just have to be able to push through that, which when you look at it, we haven't necessarily been able to win any close sets, with the exception of the 2 sets that we won against Quincy this Friday, which were by 5-point margins, as I mentioned earlier.
I think it's both. I think you have to continue to talk about it. It's funny, I worked all day yesterday from home, and one of the things that I love to do, because obviously it's hockey season for me, I go through a bunch of the old hockey stuff or whatever, and in fact, in a couple weeks, I'm going to show an interview with Wayne Gretzky to our team. And he, just like all the great champions in all the sports, all have the same fundamental logic when it comes to talking about stuff. If you don't talk about it, it's hard to dream about it, and it's hard to dream about it if you don't do it. And he talks about being a champion and what it takes to be a champion. And we need to address it. It's something that we need to continue to address. And then the second part is, once you win, the floodgates will open. And I told our guys after Saturday night in Lindenwood, I told them winning and playing to the level in which we need, it's all about a lifestyle. Excellence is a lifestyle, and I truly believe that. I think how athletes in particular, in which we're talking about, how they carry themselves, how they wake up in the morning, how they feel about, I think it's all a lifestyle. And right now, we're not in that lifestyle of winning. So we got to address it, and once we are able to get over the hump, I think the floodgates will open.
Definitely, and we'll look forward to talking to you again during our third segment, Dishing the Rock, to discuss this a little bit more, and also look forward to the next couple of weeks for the Mastodons. Coming up during the Spotlight segment, I'll be joined by freshman middle blocker Cairo Fitzgerald. I'm your host, Jordan Armstrong. Stay tuned for more on VolleyDons Weekly.
Students at IPFW have the advantage over a larger university in that we are very engaged with them, we know them, we have relatively small class sizes, and we really know our students well. And we know their capabilities, we can challenge them. And I just love the environment and the atmosphere here. I just love interacting with students, and I like the intellectual stimulation of teaching and research.
Welcome back to VolleyDons Weekly. Joining me in the Spotlight segment this week is freshman middle blockers Cairo Fitzgerald. And although you're from the state of Illinois, I've noticed as you've been traveling, and also while the football season was still going on, you're an extremely large Green Bay Packers fan?
My dad's from Milwaukee and my mom's from Beloit, which are both in Wisconsin. So I've just grown up a Packer fan and a Bucks fan my whole life. So it's just second nature for me. And I live about 20 minutes away from Wisconsin, just on the border from Kenosha. So it's always been that way.
So definitely you enjoy football season a little bit more than basketball season based off of the success that both franchises, or lack thereof, in terms of the Bucks.
Yeah, definitely easier to be a Packers fan right now than a Bucks fan.
Definitely. Well, freshman middle blocker Cairo Fitzgerald, as I mentioned before, during the past couple of weeks, you've seen an increase in playing time on the court due to some injuries that we've been having. How has that adjustment, after not only going through the fall, but the first couple of weeks of the season, kind of being that next guy up in terms of our depth chart, now having to play an integral role into our lineup, match in and match out, how have you kind of adjusted to that as the season's progressed?
It's been nice to get out there and get to play. Throughout the beginning of the year, I always knew that I was the next guy up, so if something happened, I would be going in either to be a middle or to be a sub for blocking. And just with grading going down, I was able to get a chance to go out there and play, and I liked it a lot.
Definitely looking at not only an offensive standpoint with how you've been successful, especially this past week against Quincy, you had a lot of success going 11-2-19. To hit almost 500 for the match. We talk about the middle blocker position being definitely more of a defensive role, trying to work to block the other team's attacks, but also it helps when you're able to be offensive, put away some balls, not only in serve, receive, and transition. The question that I want to ask you is, how is it different for you when we're receiving serve going to attack a ball compared to while the rally's going on and you're moving from blocking to then having to be up and make an attack?
It's much more difficult to go from blocking and to get up in transition. It's just been something I've been trying to work on all year, and a lot more recently because I just need to make sure I'm up in transition all the time. But serve receive, it's usually pretty easy to make sure that you're up all the time, and in transition it's just a lot more difficult. So there's a lot going around from where the pass is to where the setter is to what hit you're going to be running.
Now to focus a little bit more on the blocking side of it, when our team is serving, I know there's a lot of talk, we kind of scheme a little bit as to what we're going to do if the team passes the ball perfectly. When teams have more active middles that they really like to set, we tend to commit a little bit more on their middles, meaning that our middle blocker will jump every single time, whether the middle actually gets set or doesn't get set, compared to more of a read situation where you're kind of just waiting to see where the setter sets the ball and then reacting that way. Do you find it more or less difficult in, one, a commit block situation than a read block? And then I have a follow-up question also.
Committing is easier in theory because you just jump every time there's a perfect pass with the middle, but it's also difficult because it's something that me and the other middles aren't used to doing because we're used to just read blocking. But when we're playing guys like Jeff Jendrick and Nick Olson from Loyola, it's just committing something that we're going to have to do on perfect passes because they're both very good hitters and we need to try to minimize them in the game.
And then some folks at home that also come to our matches might be able to notice, depending on where they sit during the matches, that often as blockers we hold different hand signals up behind our back to kind of signal what it is that we're doing it for our defensive purposes. Why do you think that's so important, kind of as a communication from our block to our back row defenders, letting them know what you're doing as a middle blocker?
We just need to let the back row players know what we're doing. So if we're going to commit, they need to know that they're going to have to take a lot more cross court if the ball goes to the pins. And they also need to know that if it's going middle, that we're going to be jumping completely. So it's going to be more of a hard-driven ball that they'd have to dig rather than a touch off of it. And it's just nice. We'll communicate with the coaches and with our back row players of what we're going to do so everyone's on the same page for what's going on.
And now Rock kind of alluded to it a little bit before when you talked about your rotation in particular being able to produce a lot of points for us when we're serving. You typically serve at least 2, if not 3, 4 balls in a row before you end up coming out because of a libero switch. What kind of mindset do you have when you go back to serve? Because playing in the backcourt isn't necessarily something that is asked of you all that often, being a middle. But what is it that you really try and get out of your service rotations when you go back?
Well, serving's the one part of volleyball, is at least in my position, that's 100% on me. Like with hitting and blocking, it's largely affected by the people around me and on the other side of the net. But serving, it's just comes down to me and putting the ball into where I need it to go and where JW or Jordan tell me where to serve. And then, so that's always the first priority, followed by making sure that if a ball comes at me, I get it up and try to get a good dig out of it.
Definitely, that's something I know that we've been working on to increase the defensive aspect since you are so successful serving-wise, to try and extend your time on the court a little bit more. Now, when you come to the sideline, this is something that we've kind of talked about with everyone, but there's a lot of genuine reaction, a lot of enthusiasm coming from our bench. So not only because you went from being on the bench to now playing, but you also sub out in between as this match goes on, What is it about the energy from the sideline that helps so much when you're playing on the court, since you've kind of been a part of both sides now?
Everyone is in the game, whether you're on the court, one of the 6 or 7 guys that are on the court throughout the game, or if you're on the bench and come in as a serving sub, and everyone just needs to make sure that we have energy and participate in the game, whether it's hitting a ball, whether it's cheering, just everything comes down to being part of a volleyball player.
And as that extends, I mean, there's definitely some times in practice where we get on each other a little bit more, but it definitely creates a good energy that then translates, at least from a bench standpoint, to the court when we play. Additionally, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about you, your volleyball history, things like that. So when did you start playing volleyball? How long have you been playing? Where did you play? All of that type of information.
I started playing in my middle school in 7th grade because my parents and my sisters told me it would make me better at basketball, which was my favorite sport at the time. And then I've been playing ever since. I started playing for club volleyball in 8th grade for Southport, and I played there for when I was 14 and 15. When I was 16, 17, and 18, I played for Adversity, and then halfway through my 18s year, I went from Adversity to Vortex because Adversity didn't get our open bid, so we discontinued our age group for the year, and I went to Vortex and played with them for nationals.
And then with all of that experience, what is it about kind of your time, basketball being one of your favorite sports, that helped translate to you being a successful volleyball player as well?
Just the competitive aspect's a huge part of the game, because in basketball and volleyball, they're both very physically demanding sports, although volleyball is not as much physical with the other team, but more just jumping and blocking and all this stuff, and then just the competitive aspect of both of them.
Kind of starting to wrap up a little bit here, we like to learn a little bit more about you, not only from the personal side, but also educationally, since you're a student athlete as well. What are you studying? How's all of that going now that you're about 3/4 of a full year into college?
I'm a business major right now, and I intend to major in business marketing. And I finished my first semester with the highest grades I've gotten in my life, which I was pretty happy about, because coming in my first year of college with all the time commitments and the first time living on my own, it was nice to be able to get some good grades too, along with volleyball.
Now, I know it's a little years away, but is there anything in particular that you're looking to hopefully do with a business marketing degree going forward?
I think I would like to be a marketing advisor for a sports team, or maybe coach at one point in my life.
Nice. I know that there are definitely a lot of opportunities out there. Something else, because I was a business major also while I was here, that they definitely give you enough opportunities to be able to explore your options and also try and figure out whether you want to go into the marketing field or management. So you definitely get a lot of cross exposure to all of the different disciplines. So kind of continuing here, looking at the rest of the season and what's coming up here, we have 2 non-conference matches coming up this week, which we'll talk a little bit more with Coach Perrotte during our final segment. But what do you hope that the team's able to do this week from an athlete standpoint to be able to kind of set up the long haul going into the second half of the conference season?
I think even though that they're not conference matches, we still need to go out there and get a win in both of them, because we need to just get the taste back in our mouth, because we've been on a losing slide lately. So I think if we go out there and get the taste back into our mouth of a win and what it feels like, that we can get our season back on track for the second half of conference.
Sounds good. That definitely sounds like a good plan, and hopefully we'll be able to watch some video today. I know that's what we're doing for practice, and then move on and practice a little bit more as the week goes on to get ready for those 2 matches and Puerto Rico next week. Warm weather. It's definitely going to be nice, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
A big thank you to Cairo Fitzgerald for joining us for this week's Spotlight segment. I'll be joined for Dishing the Rock with head coach Ryan Rock Perrotte. Stay tuned for more on VolleyDons Weekly right here on CTV.
In my field, modeling and animation is a growing field in importance because it's not related with cinematics or movies or entertainment industry. It's related with science and how artists help to scientists to make good renditions of something that is no longer available. That relationship and that collaboration is extremely important today.
Welcome back to VolleyDons Weekly. It's now time for everyone's favorite segment on this show, Dishing the Rock with head coach Ryan Rock Perrotte. And as we talked about, we're halfway through the MIVA conference schedule now, looking forward to not only 2 non-conference matches this week against an NAIA school, Lourdes, and taking on EIVA newcomer Charleston University out of West Virginia. Then the team heads to Puerto Rico for a week. What is it about taking a trip not only to Puerto Rico, but at this time of year that is not only important for the team, but important for growth as the season goes on?
Well, believe it or not, there is some method to my madness. And when I was putting together the schedule, and obviously I was spoiled because I worked under Coach Ball for so long, but I wanted a break in between our conference matches. And the best time to do it was March. I could have done it after spring break, actually, but I didn't want to do that. Spring break is important because, A, it gets us away from here, which I think we need to do, because I think you need to get away from your environment. You know, Walter Cronkite used to say all the time that the greatest achievement of man was escaping his environment by getting to the moon. I think he's right. And we need to go somewhere where we can recollect ourselves and then get ready for the second half of the MIVA conference. The reason why we're playing Lourdes is out of Toledo is we have a great relationship with their coach there. Greg Wrights is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in the game. He's growing his program there. That's, I think, their 3rd year coming. And then the new program out of West Virginia, the University of Charleston, new member of the EIVA, it was a great package to put together for the weekend. Hopefully get a chance to play a lot of guys, kind of, as Kyle said, and he's absolutely right, hopefully get ourselves back in the win column, start feeling good about ourselves, get to Puerto Rico, rejuvenate ourselves, and then get ready for Ball State the Wednesday after spring break.
Now, even though we're going down to Puerto Rico for the week, leaving Sunday, getting back Saturday, we do have 2 matches while we're down there against the University of Puerto Rico, which we've been able to keep some type of a relationship with for when we make these trips, based off of not only contacts and alumni that we have that are down there, but also players that we have that are from Puerto Rico. What is it about having not only a recruiting base, but also alumni and people that know and understand our program and our assets to our program down in that area that's been so fruitful and so important and valuable for IPFW volleyball?
Well, everybody always assumes that every time we go to Puerto Rico, all it is just this amazing party trip and da-da-da. It's much more than that. Part of it is a serving role. Another factor, at least for me, is a fundraising role. Another big role is recruiting. And so it's a jam-packed week. And then you throw on 2 volleyball matches on top of that with practice and training and a bunch of other things. But we started going back many, many years ago, long before I was here. Juan Ortiz, who was the first Puerto Rican to play here at IPFW back in 1989, who will actually be in Puerto Rico next week. We're going to have dinner with him. It's nice to get together with our alums, reminisce, talk about current affairs of our program in volleyball, and obviously talk about some recruiting stuff. And then they have an opportunity sometimes to mingle with our guys, and I think that's always a wonderful perspective to have. Recruiting obviously is a big thing, and Puerto Ricans are really talented, so hopefully we can make some inroads there. And as I already mentioned, some fundraising stuff that I'll be doing next week as well. And then, and most importantly for the guys, is a chance to relax a little bit. We're going to have volleyball out of the 6 days we're there. We have volleyball, I believe it's 4 or 3 out of the 6 days, 4 out of the 6 days. That's a lot. I want to have some downtime, relaxation, and they really do need to rejuvenate and collect themselves again, because volleyball is a long season. I mean, we've been going since September. So it's nice to have a little break. It's almost like an all-star break in pro sports, really. And so I think it's very beneficial for our program.
And then, although that trip's going on during the week, it is important that we do get working, like you mentioned before, because when we come back, we get right back into the swing of it without really any hesitation, having 3 important, as every MIVA conference match is, important MIVA conference matches at home on Arnie Ball Court the following week of starting the 15th when we face Ball State here at home, and then welcoming in Grand Canyon University for a Friday-Saturday doubleheader.
Well, and what's so ironic about that is actually we were supposed to play Ball State before. This is how the schedule was working before. We were actually supposed to play them before spring break. But I didn't like that, and it didn't just work in with what we were trying to do. And so we had to reschedule and move Ball State to the week after. And people go, wow, you're playing 5 matches when you come back in 2 weeks. I said, yeah. Players want to play. They don't want to practice. They want to play. And by playing Ball State on a Wednesday when we return in Grand Canyon Friday, Saturday that weekend, and then turning around for our last 2 home matches against Ohio State and McKendree, it's actually a great 2 weeks of volleyball. And hopefully we're fresh, ready to go. Hopefully revenge is on our mind since we've lost to 3 out of those 4 teams. And, I think it flows nicely, especially to be back home and not have to travel after spring break as well.
Definitely, and with that, we look forward to possibly seeing some of you at home inside the Gates Center on Arnie Ball Court as the Mastodons take on Lourdes University on Friday night and then turn around and take on Charleston University Saturdays at 7 p.m. inside the Gates Center on Arnie Ball Court. Thank you to our sponsors, IAB, Indiana Physical Therapy, Moulton, O&E, and Pizza Hut. For head coach Ryan Perrotte, our spotlight guest, freshman middle blocker Cairo Fitzgerald. I'm your host, Armstrong. We hope to see you this weekend inside the Gates Sports Center. Have a great one. We'll see you later.